All right, everybody, we're starting our 4-part video of the tour of the park with Pioneer Village. Join us today on the XP Project. All right, everybody, I am out here. It is a Sunday. I'm at my favorite part of the park, Pioneer Village. So we're going to be doing a 4-part series here, kind of just going around the whole entire park in order. We're going to kind of talk about each attraction or each building, and we're starting with Pioneer Village because it's my favorite. So we're going to kind of go around the park today, Pioneer Village part of the park, and we're going to kind of check out what's going on. I'm going to try to give any little tips and tricks. If you guys can give any like tips and tricks, because I know this part of the park's been around for so long. So if you were coming here as a kid or you just know something that maybe I missed, hit it up in the comments. And as again, I really appreciate you guys following along with these. This has just been so fun, and the year's kind of just started, but we got a lot to come, and I'm smiling today because I'm in my favorite part of the park. All right, so there's actually 2 entrances to Pioneer Village. The first one is kind of the obvious one. If you're coming through the kids area, kind of by the tidal wave, you're gonna look right there and you can go straight through those Pioneer Village, I guess gates is what you'd call them. And that's gonna take you straight back there. During Frightmare season, through that area too, there's a little under bridge walkway thing that has a lot of pumpkins and cool. It's actually one of the coolest parts of the park during Frightmare, so we'll get that coverage when Frightmare comes, but you're gonna walk straight back there and it's gonna drop you right in the middle of Pioneer Village. The other one is actually on the north side of Pioneer Village, and that one's a little harder to find. So my easiest way to explain it is if you're by Bambora, you go straight east towards the mountains. And if you kind of just follow that pathway, you'll see that area. But that's kind of a little walkway back, and that's where the Spookaboo is during the Halloween season, unless they change that location. That's the entrance I actually like going in because it's just a little bit less crowded. And if you're coming from the Cannibal side, it's a lot quicker to get there that way. All right, so if you're coming into Pioneer Village, the very first stop is this little Mormon furniture museum. It's a really good one. This one's just got like a lot of little old, really old tables, chairs. I love that the echo's so bad in here, but I kind of love it because it makes you feel like you're in one of these old buildings. But it's got like a little like baby crib and stuff. This one's a really small one. There's not too much in here, but it's kind of cool to come in if you like that Mormon history, just because it shows a lot of old furniture from the time period. So bear with me on some of these Pioneer Village videos. I'm a huge history and museum guy, I guess you could call me. I just love the history of the world, and that's why I really like Pioneer Village. I hope they never get rid of this area because it's just so cool to see all the history. All right, I was gonna show you that the next building here is the Arby's, but it looks like the Peacocks kind of already taken over this area. So we're just gonna kind of go around him. Well, it actually looks like he's waiting for it to open. Yeah, you're just waiting for a good roast beef sandwich, eh? There are 2 Arby's here at the park. There's the one back here in Pioneer Village, and then there's also one over by the fountain. So I like Arby's. I think it's really good. They don't have like the full menu that the Arby's outside of Lagoon has, but they've still got most of the stuff. But it's a really good thing if like your kids aren't really into like the, you know, carnival foods and things like that. It's something that they might recognize. And Arby's kind of fits the cowboy theme back here as well. So I think it fits really good, and that's been there for a long time. So they've really set up Pioneer Village looking really nicely. Like they have it set up kind of like so it looks like an actual Old West. You know, like you'd kind of picture the Old West like this little town, and it's kind of just a straight, you know, a straight road, and you've got like the buildings on each side of it. I mean, I don't know if Peacocks would be walking around there, but maybe they would back in those times, who knows. But they've got it set up really nicely so that it really looks like the Old West, and it's just so great. So let's go ahead and check a couple of these buildings. We've got like the music building, and we've got the shoe cobblers building, and yeah, let's check these out. This is actually one of the just awesome buildings here, and if you don't know about this stuff, really come check it out because this is just so amazing. They've got all these different pianos and record players, and I mean, this is like some kind of like a lute, but there's so much history in just this one building. This is just absolutely amazing. And I do apologize, everything's behind glass, so there is always going to be a little bit of a reflection. Obviously they can't have this open because people would be messing with the stuff, but they've got like these old phonographs. I know those old like wax things that you put into the phonograph to make the music go are so cool. I love this grand piano. They've got a couple of roses on top of it. And again, like, the videos don't really do it justice just because the reflection, but you got to come in here and check this stuff out because there's so much history back here, and I just love it so much. This little shoe cobbler stand is just the best. If you kind of stick your face in there, you can kind of smell the leather of the shoes. And it's just so nice because it's like probably exactly what it smelled like back in those days. And I just love that. You can smell the history and see the history. You know, I got thinking about it. I'm sitting here in this print shop and I'm looking at communication in Pioneer, Utah was very limited. The telegraph, letters, word of mouth, and newspapers were virtually the only ways to keep news traveled. I'm just thinking about that, like, man, can you imagine going back to those times, finding one person that worked at this print shop or managed this print shop, show them TikTok or Google, or even just like the basic TV news station. I mean, it would just absolutely blow their mind. And it's wild to think that if something crazy happened, like a big, you know, country event, they had to print that thing and it had to go, you know, and travel that distance. It just blows my mind how far we've come in such a little bit of time. All right, so this little Rockport Co-op store, Rockport Co-op, sorry, I said that wrong. So this is basically like the little like co-op store, like what the market would have been back in those days. So this one was built in 1885. That just blows my mind. It was actually in Summit County. They moved these buildings from the locations that they were originally at. They weren't right here at the time. But it says like members of the co-op usually hired one person to keep the store. Then money was invested in other goods and were offered. And it was organized by farmers in the Wanship area in Utah about 1885, and it went until 1930. That just blows my mind. And you come in here and you look and it's like, I'm kind of looking at some of the stuff here, like, what is this here? You've got like shoe polish for like 35 cents. You've got stove polish, like 3 for 25 cents. And I'm sitting here and thinking, it's like, I mean, back then, I mean, unless you were kind of on the wealthy side, you probably didn't have the money to have like a stove or a shoe polish. But the fact that that's 25 cents, I mean, 25 cents back in those days would have been quite a bit of money. And I'm seeing a couple things that were 99 cents, which actually kind of intrigues me because it's like, you know, we kind of do like the like $99.99, so it doesn't look like 100. It like makes it, the marketing side of it, look better pricing. And to think that they were doing it back in those days still just blows my mind. The coolest thing about these buildings too is that when you're stepping in the buildings, like you can hear the creaks of the wood, and it just makes it so cool because it's pure authentic. All right, we're gonna make sure to hit the few food stands back here while we're back here. So I'm gonna skip the ice cream right now, but we're gonna move on to the next one. So this is basically like the stove museum. So this has got anything that had to do with like stoves, cooking. You know, there are like a few little like granary machines, like where they like process grains and whatnot. So this one was kind of like that. This one's really cool. You know, it's funny, I actually hadn't realized this one was here until probably about like 10 years ago, because it's kind of tucked back by where the bathrooms are before you turn that corner. But make sure you come into this one. This one's got some really cool stoves. And what I always think about with this one, my grandma, she actually had a stove that looked a lot like these black ones down in her basement. And I remember going down in her basement and seeing that stove, but it just looked so foreign to us because it doesn't look like anything we have today. So they've got this one stove at the back here that's the Sovereign Jewel. This exquisite stove is an excellent example of the lengths to which early Americans went in order to create a work of art out of a household necessity. Built by the Detroit Stove Works, this jewel appeared in their 1889 calendar for the selling price of $36. That's wild how cheap that is for us nowadays. That would have been like just an absolute life savings back then. A register and an air pipe collar would cost $1 more. The bronze dome is bedecked with jewels and high art ceramic tiles. This is just unbelievable. Man, $36, that's wild that that was the cost back then. But like I said, that would have been probably like life savings back then. But this thing is just beautiful. The picture doesn't do it justice. Come back, check this thing out. This is really a piece of art. So you've probably heard it in my videos, but the peacocks make a crazy loud, like yelping, I guess is the only word I can think of for it. So it really will scare you. I was in that stove museum and it just started like screaming from outside the door. And it almost sounds like a like wailing person getting stabbed or something, but like it's like the craziest loud yelping sound. So you'll hear that the whole time you're back here, but they kind of just wander the park. I think these peacocks own the park. They kind of just do their thing. So just leave them be, they'll leave you be. But they are fun to watch, and you get a rare time every once in a while where they've got their wings fully expanded. It just looks amazing. All right, so rounding around right by the Fizz, we've got this little one. This one's a little hard to see because it's kind of dark. But this is basically just like the normal little like you know, kind of like you know, two or three person log cabin that would have been back in those days. I really like the smell and setup of this one because it's just got like a really rustic smell to it. But you can see they just got like the 2 beds here and a little fire, campfire stove. And whatnot. This probably would have been just like kind of the average size house because it's not like too glamorous or too big, but maybe like the average size family, like small family. But this one's really cool. Sometimes you miss this one. It's right kind of behind the fizz right there. But this one just looks so good, and the smell in here is awesome. All right, so this is one that you're definitely going to miss if you don't know the park very well because it's all the way to the very south side of Pioneer Village. But this is the Telephone Museum. This one is so cool, and one of the reasons I really like this one is because it's basically like a full-size house. Like, you can't go up in the top level, but if you come up to the front and whatnot here, you can like see inside, and there's like a little office in there and stuff. This one's really cool, kind of shows the history of the telephone industry. It's really awesome. This one's got a lot of really cool memorabilia from like the old days when there was like the switchboard telephone. So like you'd call in, basically you would tell the operator where you wanted to go. They'd put that cord in the different switchboards depending on where they wanted to go, because everything was wired back then, you know, there wasn't anything wireless. So they had to switch the switchboards depending on where you wanted that call to go. It's so cool. And then on the other side here, they've got like the phones over the different decades. So it kind of starts with like really, really old phones and kind of gets up to where like semi-modern, there's not like iPhones sitting in here. But man, if you could just show them, like, it just blows my mind. If you could show somebody from back then an iPhone, they would just freak out. Trying to make a call. All right, so as we're hitting the next building here, this one's like a fan favorite of mine from when I was a little kid. This is the Train Museum. This one is just unbelievable. They've got so many model trains from back in the old days, and it's just, you gotta come in here. You could spend almost an hour in here looking at all the trains. You know, I got cracking myself up a little bit. It's like, on a side note, this is a great building to come into during the middle of summer because it's pretty nicely air conditioned, but it's always playing like super like twangy, you can hear it in the background, like twangy like banjo music the whole time. So it's like, yeah, come in here and get a little break from the air conditioning, but the music might make you go crazy after a little bit, or it might make you learn how to play the banjo. And yeah, if you are a model train collector or anything into model trains, make sure that you definitely go in there. Whoa, I almost just walked into a spider nest right there. Kind of freaked me out a little bit. So there is a little area over here that you can kind of, right when you come out of the train station, where you can kind of just sit here. And I would recommend definitely checking this area out. It's super peaceful back here, and they've got the little river going right behind it, and so you can hear the river. This is actually one of my favorite places to sit in the park. Grab some food or a drink and just come back here and sit here. It's so great. I always like to sit back there because you can just hear the water flowing so good. And tip to all you lovers out there, this would be a great spot to get engaged. All right, so we've got like the little blacksmith here. This is kind of a cool little shack. It's just got like a fake horse in here, but kind of shows you what it would have looked like back in the old days with like blacksmithing and whatnot. And then if you turn straight to your left here, this is where the Circus building is. This is the Circus building I always talk about. You can tell it's a Circus building by the colors and everything. But this is the one I always say, like during the summertime, they've got really good air conditioning in here. So it's a good place to come hang out if it gets really hot. This is kind of cool. They actually added a new piece in here, this little elephant with the clown standing on his head. That is really cool. I'd like to know the history on that because it almost looks like, man, it almost looks like something that might have been a piece at a circus that like kids sat in or something, like a little like chair piece or something. That is really cool. That's cool that they added that in here. Looks really good. This one's just really great because it's got a lot of like old toys from back in the old day that kids would have played with and whatnot. And like I said, the air conditioning in this building is my favorite at the park. It feels so good today in here. I don't know why it's different. Maybe they've got a different unit on here than they do on the other buildings, but it's always just nice and cool in here. So always come back here and you'll be able to keep busy while you're in here because there's tons to look at. All right, so right next to the Circus building, this is actually one of, I think, a lot of people's favorite buildings, but this is the Carriage Hall. So basically you walk through here, and this is gonna show you just all different types of wagons and carriages from back in those days. And I just love this so much because it's actually one that you kind of walk through. It's a huge building, and you can walk right through the whole thing. The other thing about this one too, the smell in here is so authentic because it's got that kind of a little mix between like leather and wood smell in here. And they've got a lot of these really old, wagons from way back in the day. A lot of pictures. The history in here is just unbelievable. Kind of just want to walk through here. It's just wild to think that this was kind of like one of the main modes of transportation back then. And correct me if I'm wrong here, I could be. It feels like the air conditioning is pumping really good in here today. This one tends to be a little hotter during the summertime. So they might have got like an AC unit fixed or something on the roof. I work in the AC industry, so I can tell if something's working or if it's not, whether the, you know, it's 100 degrees in here or not. But this feels really good. This one's really cool. So this looks a lot like the wagon that's out in front of the Haunted Mansion building at Disneyland. I just mentioned that because there's a lot of people that think that that Haunted Mansion hearse in front of Disneyland was like Joseph Smith or Brigham Young's or something. There's some rumor. Hit in the comments if you can know. I just remember somebody mentioned that one time. I think that was debunked, but for a little while they had said that that was a rumor, but I don't know if that's even true or not. All right, so now we're back on Main Street. So now we're on the east side of the Main Street. So this one's really great. So this is basically like the barber shop, and this one's just so great. My mom was a hairdresser growing up, so like we'd always come in here and kind of pretend like this is what she would have been like back in the 1800s. But this is just such a great building. All right, so kind of a fun little piece of history. I like reading all these signs. There's usually a sign in almost every building, but this is the one that I love. So it says, of all the signs from the pioneer days, the barber pole with its red and white stripes is the most familiar. This was a time when barbers doubled as sometimes surgeons, and these stripe poles advertised this. The white stripes represented the bandages, and the red stripes the bleeding limbs of an injured person. I don't think a lot of us realize that those stripes were that morbid, but man, times were different back then, I'll tell you that much. All right, and then as we head out of the hair parlor or whatever you'd want to call that, we come into the what in my opinion would be the worst building to come into back in those days, the dentist office. You know, I don't think dentistry is that bad if you've got like the Novocaine and medication to take care of yourself with it, but back then it just would have absolutely been brutal. And I think that it is one thing that's funny if you look at this. So this is just kind of one little building with everything, but if you kind of look right there on the little table next to the chair, there's a little shot glass. I know that they used to give the people a shot of whiskey or something right before just to make the thing a little bit less painful. So it says, a dentist in the early days of the West was an unpopular necessity. The Pioneer Village Dental Office is home to many examples of equipment a typical dentist would have used. Dental equipment of the era was discomforting in its very appearance. Anesthetics were at an early stage in development, so often a strong dose of whiskey was used to make the patient care little about the dental visit. I mean, I can't imagine how much whiskey it would take for me to not feel a tooth being pulled out. All right, and then after you get your tooth pulled, you can come in here to the post office. This one's actually really cool. It just looks like a stereotypical post office from back in those days, but they've got these little boxes and stuff, and a couple of these kind of open up, so it's kind of fun for the kids to come check these out. And they've got like a little safe in here that they would have had back in those days to store, you know, the valuables and whatnot. And the little clerk desk. I mean, I'm sure the post office was a pretty small, outlet back in those days. All right, so right next door to the post office, we've got like the meat company. This would have been like I mean, what would you even call this, like the chop house or something? But they've got like sausages hanging and stuff. A lot of these little buildings are just kind of little ones, so we're kind of just hitting these really fast, but that's kind of a fun one to come into. And then when you come right next door here, you've got like the clock building. This is another one of those that I was saying, like, man, can you imagine if like an earthquake hit or something? These clocks would just be on the ground, but I bet they probably have these pretty nailed to the sides of the wall. But this one's one of those that I always feel like a little uneasy being in, because it's like, I feel like one wrong step and one of these clocks is gonna fly off the shelf. All right, so I wanted to just hit real quick before we go over to the other side, because the Pioneer Village is kind of split in halves. So I wanted to say the food places that are back here. So basically you've got Grandma Christie's. That's where you can get like the Navajo tacos and the funnel cakes. We're actually gonna get one of those here in just a second. Then right across the street from that, you've got the ice cream parlor. This is like a hard served ice cream parlor, and I know this probably won't be as popular once the Peacock parlor opens up, but it's still a great one to come back to if you want that old hard served ice cream. They do have a Fizz right down here by the bathrooms. Fizz is super popular here in Utah. It's like a soda shack where you can do like flavorings and things like that. And then on this side also you've got Arby's that we talked about a little bit earlier. And then across the road is the Pioneer Perk, which is the coffee shop. And you can get some like cinnamon rolls, donuts, things like that in that one, like pastries and whatnot. Then coming around the corner, we'll hit that on the way back up to Rattlesnake, but they've got the barbecue pit. That's the other one that's really good. But that kind of rounds out the food back here. But there's actually a lot more food back here than you'd realize. So you could spend a day back here eating everything and have everything that you need. All right, so one thing that's a super underrated thing here at the park is there's a little, like, I want to call this like a teal, green, blue, greenish building right down kind of towards that would be the south side of Pioneer Village, right across from the Fizz. So you can pay and they'll dress you up as like old-timey Western attire, and then you can get like the old, it's like the sepia photos of you and your family like dressed in like the old Western attire. This is really fun to do, and especially if you've got like a big family and you want to have a memory from the park, come check this out. It's really worth your time. All right, I'm telling you right now, if you come out here and get one of these funnel cakes, you're not going to be able to finish it by yourself. And if you do finish it by yourself, hit me a comment or a video showing that you finished it by yourself, because I won't believe you. These are awesome, and they're like warm and everything, so they're so fresh. During the Frightmare season, these are just so great to get. All right, so the Old Mill barbecue pit, this is actually one of my favorite food spots in the entire park. I love barbecue. Come back here and check it out. It's really good. I'm not going to hit Rattlesnake Rapids or obviously the log ride. We'll hit those more on the ride videos. So that kind of does it for our south side. So let's head over to the north side and we'll check out the buildings over there. All right, so as we round the middle and we're heading up to the north side of Pioneer Village, this side's a little smaller. There's a lot of open space here, but you can see there the log ride is still nothing. I think that at some point this ride's going to come back. You can't convince me that nothing's going to go there, because I just don't see why they would put all those boards up if it wasn't coming back. I think something's going to be there at some point. I think we're a long ways away from that, but I think something is coming. There are a lot of little just like eating areas and stuff back over on this side, but this side is a really peaceful side of the park because you've got this middle area that's kind of all grass, and there's almost always peacocks here. There's one peacock that likes to perch up on that. It's like a fountain that used to be a fountain. It's not a running fountain anymore. But this area is just so beautiful. And this area, we're going to kind of hit these buildings. These are all kind of smaller buildings, but we're going to kind of just hit these one at a time and check them out. All right, so over on this side, you've got the Wanship cabin. That's like a 2-story cabin. That one's just kind of got a lot of, this kind of would have been like the bigger family's house back in the day, but this one's really nice. It's got like just like a lot of little stuff on the inside, but I like this one especially because it's kind of like what like a normal house would have been back then, like a 2-story house. I know that probably like the average household might not have been able to afford something this big. This little cabin's a great one because it's like that, you know, typical 2-story cabin back in the day. I mean, bigger families would have had to have a little bit bigger of a house like this. But I kind of wonder how many people would have lived in this house, because there's just not a lot of room. It would have been very hard having a very big family back in the day, but you know, Utahns tended to have pretty big families, so they would have had to have had a 2-story. One of the things I wanted to mention here is when you're in these houses, just look around because there's so much detail. And like, I'm looking back in the back here and there's like one of those little like Viewmaster things that they would have had back in the day, and like a little purse on the nightstand, and a little dog toy down in the middle. You can spend here, it's almost like an I Spy. You can sit here and look through here and just see so many cool things in these cabins. All right, this little schoolhouse is just so great. Just a little building, but it just kind of shows what school life would have been back then. I did want to mention there's this little photo here behind me. I mentioned this in my Did You Know video, but this looks like a picture of like old time Lagoon. Next time you get a chance, come check this out. See if you can maybe give me a little info on this, on like when and what time period this was, because it looks like that's Main Street, based on like the Main Street area right over there by Terror Ride, but I can't really tell. But if you can tell, come check this out and let me know what you think. All right, this church building's so great. I mean, if you want to really feel like the Pioneer Village history, walk into this church. It's kind of just like a somber, quiet building, but it's such a cool church. They've also got like a rock here on the other side that was like a piece from what they used to build the original temple in Salt Lake. So it's just kind of a cool thing to see if you like that side of history. Really awesome. The history is really cool in this area of the park, just because, you know, Pioneer Village, you kind of think of the church history here, especially in the state of Utah. That history is so vast, and to be able to see this is just really cool. All right, and then we got like the little Bingham cabin. This is one that's just like a little cabin. This one was named after Euradus Bingham, who discovered the mineral deposits in a canyon. He was unaware of the extent of his discovery, nor could he have guessed that his namesake canyon would one day be the site of one of the world's major mining operations, Kennecott Copper. So this was actually his cabin. And if you go in here, this was just a really small cabin. This guy probably wasn't super wealthy, but you know, they had like their like food side over on one side here, And then you've got like your bedding, obviously like the kids, you know, the adult bed, and then you got your kids bed and the little baby bed as well. But this is a really cool one. The history on that one, thinking that this was the guy that kind of helped discover the whole Kennecott copper mine. That's a very big mine kind of towards down south that, you know, everyone in Utah pretty much knows of that mine. All right, this is probably one of the coolest houses here in Pioneer Village. So this one's called the Gingerbread House. This one is more like high-end luxurious. I mean, this would have been the super wealthy that lived in this house. Probably like, you know, like a mayor or somebody that had a lot of you know, high class back in those days. This one is really cool. Come in here. I mean, you can probably spend a good half hour in here just looking at everything. There's so many details in this one, and you can tell by the carpet and stuff. This would have just definitely been, you know, kind of that, not quite a cabin, not quite a house, but just that middle area. Definitely a wealthy house back in those times. I always talk about this, but one of the things that cracks me up when I'm back here is like, you know, you're back in Pioneer Village and it kind of feels like you're back in the old West, and you kind of get into that like mode of like being back in the old days. And then you kind of get towards this side of it by where the gingerbread house is, and you can hear like the hip hop music and stuff playing from Laguna Beach. And so it's just like really funny because it's like you're kind of in the mode of Pioneer Village, and then you hear like some hip hop song or some techno song come on or something. Cracks me up. All right, so right next to the gingerbread house, this is one that some people miss, but if you've been coming to Lagoon your whole life, you know exactly where this is. There's a little Davis County holding jail back here. And we used to always come back here when we were little kids, but it was always so fun just because it's a little jail. And you can actually go into the jail here, and they have like, you know, the jail cells that can open. So kind of a fun little photo op for the kids and whatnot. They can come in here and pretend like they're in jail for a day. So the one cool thing I like about this, so this sign says, in the early days, people took their lagoon fun seriously. Anyone interfering with it by being drunk or rowdy would be tossed into this concrete jail. It was built in 1895. It was actively used till 1919. That's crazy that only about 100 years ago this was still being used. Troublemakers were conveniently locked up for the night. The following day, they would be put aboard the old Bamberger train and sent home. This is the area of the original entrance to Lagoon from the railway station. So it's just so cool. I mean, not only is this a cool jail just to get like photo ops stuff, but it's actually a huge piece of lagoon history as well. All right, this little town hall building, this is the one, you can kind of see the jail kind of behind, but this one's great. So this is another little jail, but I love this one because these are actual jail cells back here from Kimberly, Utah. And I love how the jail cells looked a little different back then. They were really cool looking, but this said log jails of the frontier period were common, but these early day cells from Kimberly, Utah were iron and were originally housed in a small brick jail house in that community, which was once a mining town near Old Cove Fort. Being lodged in these cells could not have been much of a pleasure. The ceilings are low, the cells are cramped, and the bathroom facilities were not deemed necessities for the individual cells or their inmates. I mean, I can't just even imagine being in one of those. They look like the most cramped cells I've ever seen. They actually look worse. I'd rather be in the wood jails over on the other side. All right, so rounding out the north side, we've got the little gift shop here down right before you get to the middle again. This little gift shop's great. It's kind of like themed to the Pioneer Village theme. So, you know, if your kids have been here, spend a good time. There's a couple good photo ops here. You've got like the bear and the buffalo that you can get good pictures in front of. And so these are really fun ones to come into, even if you're just wanting to buy a little something to, you know, commemorate your time at Pioneer Village. And then as you walk over here, there is a little river down here. And this actually used to be a fishing pond, so you used to be able to pay and they would give you a fishing rod and bait and whatnot, and you could actually fish in this area. It's been a long time since that's been the case, but it's just kind of a memory of you know, if it's something that you remember from when you were a kid, hit it up in the comments. And then literally right behind that pond, there's this little building that's the coin building. This building is super underrated, and I didn't even know this building existed till fairly recently, but this is a really fun one. If you're a coin collector, come in here. This is so cool. They've got little things that you can like magnify each coin. You could take probably a good hour in here and just spend time looking at all the coins, and they've got a lot of like certificates and maps and stuff hanging up on the wall. This is one not to miss. All right, everybody, that's gonna do it for our first of 4 videos, kind of doing our tour of the park. This was Pioneer Village. I wanted to start out with this one because Pioneer Village is my favorite part of the park. We'll have the other 3 coming here shortly. Thanks for joining us on the XP project.